Sox in the basement.
Little did Korey Lee know that he was in competition with Reese McGuire for a spot on the 26-man roster as Sox in the Basement kicks off. Ed is still in a hospital, but a better hospital now. He's in like a rehab hospital, and we're actually helping him today. We're going to bring him in here right now. How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing just dandy, but I'm on temporary bed rest until my blood pressure can go up. So talking White Sox and trying to figure out why you go out and give guaranteed money to a guy that is basically disposable.
That'll get your blood pressure up. Right, maybe we'll get the blood pressure up. So I saw you this weekend. We'll give everybody a quick update. Ed's been moved to a hospital that is basically a rehab hospital to get his heart pumping the way it should be pumping and his kidneys going the way they should be going and everything back to normal. We had that beautiful day over the weekend, and you were outside. I saw a picture that was sent to me of you throwing spirals in the courtyard of this hospital. You got to go outside for the first time in over a month. The recovery process is continuing. You got to throw the ball with your son. I know that was probably really exciting and good for you. But then you have these blood pressure things where they're still trying to get you regulated. And I asked you, I'm like, are you sure you want to come on the show? And you're like, I need to get my blood pressure up because right now I'm confined to the bed that I'm laying in until I can get my blood pressure up. And I was like, well, I got just the thing for you. How about $1.2 million in guaranteed money to Reese Spanky McGuire, bringing him back here, and he's going to take over the spot that Korey Lee thought he was getting when Kyle Teel went down. And the weird thing about this is you have Korey Lee. He's out of options. He costs you basically nothing. He's familiar with the team, and he could very easily sit around for a month. If you have no intention of keeping three catchers, he can very easily sit around for a month while Kyle Teel is getting back from his hamstring injury. And when he gets back, then it's Teel and Caro, and you release Lee then. But instead what they do is they get rid of Lee now. They bring in Reese McGuire for $1.2 million. And unless they intend to keep three catchers, you're going to pay him $1.2 million for about 3 weeks of service on your Major League Baseball team in a season where you don't expect to make the postseason. And this is something like a contending team does, and also a team that has a payroll over $100 million. This is $1.2 million from a team that doesn't spend money. He's literally the seventh highest player on the team, Reese McGuire, a catcher who will be here for 3 to 4 weeks. It blows my mind that they made this move. I don't know if I'm upset about it or just flummoxed, Ed.
I'm not upset per se, but I am flummoxed by it because Korey Lee's trade value, if that's what you're going after, is the same now as it is going to be later on, as you get towards the end of April, beginning of May, whenever Kyle Teel's ready to come back. And I assume they'll give Teel some time to go down rehab at Charlotte and everything. But the thing that I came to when I was thinking about this last night, watching the broadcast of the Sox and Mariners and listening to them sing the praises of Korey Lee, watching Reese McGuire sit there and talk to Will Venable. They were showing that he's sitting there, he's with Venable at the dugout, and they're talking the whole early part of the game. And, and then later on McGuire gets into the game and actually homers, which was nice. But the thing that I came to was, if I'm Korey Lee, I'm not giving up on the idea that I'm the third catcher. I'm sitting there and I'm making waves because they talk about his energy and his spirit and and some of the intangible stuff that he supposedly brings.
And he's vocal. Remember, he was vocal with his previous manager. He was the rookie that had just gotten there and said some disparaging things that made people go, "Who's this guy?" while he was being managed by Pedro Grifol.
And good for Korey Lee. But I'm wondering if the unspoken stuff is that Will Venable started to sense, and the clubhouse started to sense, that Korey Lee wants to be the starting catcher. And Korey Lee's not going to accept being behind Edgar Caro. He's not going to accept being released in favor of Kyle Teel. And I'm wondering if they're just sitting there going, okay, we're just not going to make waves down the road. Because if Korey Lee comes out and plays well, okay, and if he outplays Edgar Caro, And don't tell me that that's not a possibility if you're only going into the season. Anything could happen, right? Carroll could come out and slump pretty badly at the start of the year. If he's out playing everybody and Kyle Teel comes back and you're just going to release this guy that's been the better catcher, it's going to...
You're thinking that they made this move. This is interesting. You think they made this move because they don't want anything to get in the way of their decision to go to Teel and Caro when Teel and Caro are both healthy and ready to go. They don't want that complication. And that will go along the lines of the non-competition in camp. I mean, there really wasn't any competition in this camp. Like who actually won a job in this camp? I could make the argument that Derek Hill won a job over Jared Kalenic. I could make that argument that Curtis Meade found a way to stay on this roster when he probably wasn't going to make it onto this roster. But Everson Perea barely played, and they have no intention of letting him go because he's out of options. He was always making this team. And the five guys that are in the rotation, Shane Smith had a terrible camp. If Shane Smith has that camp last year, he gets returned as a Rule 5 pickup. He doesn't even make the team. He's had a terrible camp. I mean, be nervous about him right now. I don't know what's going on with him. He's your opening day starter. Anthony Kay was always making a team. Davis Martin was always making the team. Sean Burke was always making the team. Eric Fetty was always making the team. Like, there may be one or two relief pitchers, but the guys who actually won jobs were Derek Hill won a job probably over Jared Kalenic, and Reese McGuire won a job over Korey Lee, which I don't think Lee gets without the Teel injury. If Teel doesn't get injured, I think Lee was getting released the whole time, which, blows our theory of go with three catchers because you want to get these guys in the lineup all the time right out of the water. Because it seems now that Lee was never going to be used. And before you get to your next thought here, Ed, I did text somebody that I always rely upon to try to, I have a few people I reach out to ask questions about, like, why are they doing this? And they're generally, we've seen it over the years. They'll tell me something and then it'll come out more official months or a year later on as to why this happened. The belief is that McGuire has better defense, but also the pitchers didn't like throwing to Lee for some reason. There was some sort of disconnect with their pitching staff and Korey Lee. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the word that I was getting via text on the day that this all happened. So there seemed to be a lot of factors there, but I don't think Lee was ever in the cards, which is really interesting to me because I thought the guy had a chance. He's a solid catcher, and if he was never in the cards, I would have traded him before you basically told every team in Major League Baseball that you need to trade him before opening day, because now you need to trade him by opening day or you get nothing.
Yeah, and that's the thing that... if they were going to make a move for Reese McGuire, I mean, they kind of did. They had Drew Romo in camp. They had other catching options, which was the part that and Romo was never in the running for anything, but we kind of knew that. That was pre-faded. But it is interesting that for a team where there's a lot of things that could have been wide open, there really wasn't much consideration given to guys that were having really good camps outside of that outfield where, like you said, Derek Hill outplayed Jared Kalenic.
Right. But then also think of this. If Baldwin isn't injured, and they're probably going to start him on the injured list, right? Just to keep room. I think they're going to do that so they can hold on to another guy who's out of options. But if Baldwin never gets injured, what were they doing? Were they sending him down to AAA because they had options for him and they were going to keep Hill and they were going to keep Perea? Or would one of those guys not make the team? It's really, I wish I could dive into Chris Getz's mind to find out exactly what the thought process was going into camp, because it feels like that mind was made up. Like, dive in there like I'm in the movie Inner Space. Remember that? Just get in my little pod, get injected into him, kind of work my way up to the brain, hook up. Right. And try to find out what the heck was going on in there, because it seems like the mind was made up in a lot of ways. A lot of things that we thought were competitions were not competitions during spring, I don't think.
Well, and even Derek Hill, you can't tell me that he wasn't given every opportunity over some of the other outfield options.
But he was given every opportunity. He did come through. I mean, here's the thing. Like, look at the guys that got released as the weekend began. I mean, Ryan Barucki, I don't think he had a bad camp. He seemed like he was nails, to be honest with you. I think his whip was like a 0.6 something. He was showing that he could do it. He was getting the push. The Chuckster was talking about how that's his pick, his dark horse pick to make the team. There were people who were watching that camp who thought he was going to make it. He doesn't make it. Wade Jr., he's not an outfielder. That's the problem. There was no room for him. He was hitting the crap out of the ball. He had a great camp. Both of them got released on Friday. So, I mean, are some of these guys like maybe there's two things that I kind of feel after this camp as it comes to an end. One, this is just practice more than it is competition in the spring. They know who they think is going to make the team. The 26-man roster is far more filled out than we like to believe going into camp. I think a lot of this is smoke and mirrors to kind of get you excited about spring training baseball when they already know who they're going to bring. So it's more practice than it is actual competition in the spring, at least with this front office, or at least this year. That's what I see. And the other thing is, I think some of these guys are just on the team in case somebody gets injured. They're literal backups. That's what they kind of were using their catchers like. And then Teal gets injured and they're like, you know what's better? Reese McGuire at $1.2 million. I still can't believe $1.2 million for a guy who, when Teal comes back, is off this team unless they keep three catchers. And based upon what they've done with their roster before they get it completely finalized, seems to me like that's not in their plans.
I think we all expected a team that is still essentially a 100-loss team to come in with, scrutiny for, say, Chase Mydroth, or, more scrutiny for the pitching staff. And, it gets clearly brought in some guys that could have made the team in Wade, Borucki, and Borucki's probably a decision that gets made for, a number of reasons, or, they just, maybe there's still something they didn't like, even though he had a good spring. But you didn't really see, you sort of started to see, like you said, it really just being, let's run these guys out there and run them through some stuff to the point where, all we're looking at is, can this guy hit enough to justify our decision and say Pereira? Or, is there the flexibility there that we think Acuna is going to have playing the outfield and playing the infield?
Oh, I want to get I want to get into that too. I want to get into the flexibility, and I also want to talk to you about this point that you're making right now. Okay, because you're talking about, okay, well, let's see if they do just enough. I don't know if Chase Mydroth did enough when you look at Sam Antonacci, and it's like they know Antonacci's good enough, so they go and they start playing him in the outfield, which goes back to the versatility. Before we get into all that, switch to a new age of life with Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living. Make it so they can get around on their own and live independently. Hyatt has stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, even bathroom remodeling. They work with your insurance, have 0% financing for qualified individuals. I was at their showroom in Evergreen Park recently. The amount of doohickeys and gadgets and actually beautiful furniture. Like these lift chairs, these beds, these don't look like hospital beds. I mean, this is, you got mom or dad sitting there like my parents are like that. They don't want to admit that they're getting older. This is like a constant struggle, right? I mean, like my mother will go to try to lift something that she just doesn't have the ability to do. And she'll tell my son, Dominic, who's an 18-year-old high school athlete, that she can get it. And he just looks at her like, no, you can't. They get to that age, right? So some are stubborn. They don't want to admit they need this. This blends right in with the furniture that's already in the house. If you use a CPAP machine, you're unhappy with your vendor, Hyatt is going to help you out. Switch, get supplies directly mailed to you. They also have the latest and greatest in continuous glucose monitors. See everything that Hyatt can do for you at HHME.com. Sam Antonacci had a great camp. I think he did everything he could to prove that he should be added to the 40-man roster and be out there on the field. Chase Mydroth last season, again, they're saying there was some injury. They're saying there's a reason why he was down as the season went on. But he hit 253 with a 649 OPS. That's an 84 OPS plus. 100 is league average. Now, I like him too. This is going to be his year 24 season. I'm not giving up on the guy, but I don't think there was any competition. I don't think it mattered what Antonacci did. I don't think anybody was taking that job from him. And I think there were a lot of guys on this team. Nobody was taking that job out of the gate from them. And I don't know if a team that lost 102 games the year before should necessarily be doing that. But it's like they have in their mind, these are the guys we're going to war with to start. We're at least giving them the first couple months of the season. That's why you keep hearing these other guys are coming later. It's like they want to give these guys just a little bit more leash to see what they are in 2026 with this attitude before they move on from guys. They go the whole year, though. And let's say they hold on to a Mydroth who goes out and let's say he only hits 250 again with a below league average OPS, and you've got Antonacci toiling down the minors, hitting the crap out of the ball. I'm going to start rattling the sabers and screaming, what are we doing here? But it feels like it's just all about giving a little bit more runway to guys before they say, nope, you're not the guy. Let's give this guy a chance.
Well, even more to the point, it doesn't have to be a direct competition between somebody like Antonacci and Chase Mydroth. You know that Acuna can play both infield and outfield. You know that Acuna could take over as your starting second baseman, and he's had a good camp. And obviously he's a big trade acquisition from Luis Robert Jr. I'm looking at, say, Chase Mydroth versus like a Tristan Peters. Okay? Peters has gone out. He's played good defense. He's executed when he's been asked to. He's hit the ball reasonably well. There's more direct competition in my mind between somebody like him to sit there and say, I'm going to make this team and we're going to re-rack the outfield, especially if Pereira is going to be there anyway. I mean, he's capable of playing center. Or, I don't know if Derek Hill can play center, but, that's in my mind where some of the competition falters as well, is that where there's openings, where you could create an opening for a player that comes in and plays well. And Lamont Wade Jr. he played first base mostly for the Giants. He did play some outfield. I don't think he's very good out there. But, you could make the case that he could have stuck as a corner outfielder, especially if you've got, decent defensive options around him. Mydroth, I think, stands out more so than any of the other position players because we knew that they were committed to Miguel Vargas, and Vargas is done fine in camp, I think.
And they're going to keep going with Colson Montgomery. And so, yeah,
Colson Montgomery was never in danger, and they have to mentally. I think they have to give Colson Montgomery that assurance that, based on what he did in the second half last year, that they're going to give him an opportunity to go to the majors and do it, regardless of whether or not he struggles in Arizona, because 90% of his game problems are mental, and maybe even more than that. We know. So I think giving him assurance has made a heck of a lot of sense. And Murakami obviously is the big acquisition, and the jury will be out. He's a rookie, at this point he's a rookie. So I think we're picking on Chase Mydroth to a certain degree, but also you're right. When you look at the numbers, you sit there and you go, okay, statistically, what has this guy done? He's a gamer, and maybe they're just giving him that same benefit of the doubt that they're giving the catchers, that they're giving Colson Montgomery, lumping Chase Mydroth in with that core group of rookies last year, sitting there saying, you did enough last year to give us a reason to give you some leash, to let you go and figure this out. I'm kind of okay with that, but at the same time, if they were grossly outplayed in spring by somebody who you believe in, like a Sam Antonacci, somebody who's on the rise, yeah, I don't know that I wouldn't, give the hot hand a try.
Well, here's a guy I think is the mistake that they're keeping. I know why they're keeping him on the roster, because he showed some stuff. He went to the World Baseball Classic and looked good in that competition. But again, World Baseball Classic, yes, some of these teams are like all-star teams, and some of these teams are AAA teams, depending on who you're playing and what country you're going up against, right? And Curtis Mead then gets back, and since he's been back, it's not like he's tearing it up out there. And he seems like a de facto going to make it because he's out of options. And I think that they're gonna turn around in a month or so and say, why are we doing this? Because Antonacci could come and be on this team, and Mydroth could be on this team. One of them is the backup, and one of them slides into where Mead is sitting. Like, Mead is a first base. I mean, I think he can do a little bit of second. He can't really play third, okay? But he covers some of your infield positions, your third base, whatever. But I mean, like, I don't know if he did enough to deserve a job on this team. And I think what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, well, we just don't want to let go of our toys. We don't want to let go of guys that are out of options and let them go forever. We're really, really afraid that if we let a guy go, that all of a sudden he's going to go someplace and he's going to be really good. They don't seem that afraid to do that to Korey Lee, though, which I find to be real because he had a good camp. So, I mean, like, it's really interesting, right? Like, think about that. We really, really want to hold on to these guys that are out of options who may not have performed well enough to beat guys who have options, who aren't on the 40-man roster, who played better and may have a higher ceiling. And we're going to give these guys at least the beginning of the season to figure their stuff out. But we're not doing that for Korey Lee. That's, I think, the thing that stands out the most to me. When you really break it down, it's like the philosophy is like completely different over here with most of these other guys that are out of options. But Lee's out of options. There's literally a path for him to be on the major league team. And they're like, we're going to go grab some Reese McGuire. Even if his defense is better, even if it isn't working out that well with the pitchers, we're going to spend the next 3 weeks or so with Reese McGuire before Kyle Teal comes back. I just find that to be, it's a little bit of a contradiction. It's the one thing that to me, it perplexes me a little bit. On the other hand, this is a great problem to have. Like I looked at their spring stats, Ed. You'd be astounded. I remember it was a year or so ago. We had the conversation, can we just find one guy who could have an OPS over 800 on this team? Can we just find one? 25 players in spring, according to the stats sheet, had OPSs over 800 with Lenny Sosa at the 26th player at 798 as we sit here talking. They hit this spring. There's a lot of guys hitting this spring. And I think since the majority of those guys are out of options, they're like, we got to give this at least a month or so in the majors. But that just not for Korey Lee. It's going to perplex me until I actually see what happens when Teal comes back. I'm not going to be sure exactly what happened here with him. Because now if Teal comes back and they go, we're going with 3 catchers, Reese McGuire is going to be here all year long. That's why we gave him, a little over $1 million in guaranteed money. I'll be like, okay, maybe there's a reason then. Maybe your theory then holds even more water because you're like, they need a catcher that's going to sit there and not care that he's never playing. He's just going to collect his check and be there when one of these guys has to be replaced or needs a day off, but you're going to have Caro and Teal playing all the time. I don't think they're going to keep 3 catchers at any point this year. That doesn't seem to be their plan. But it would make a little bit more sense if it was their plan. And you think about the fact that you have a Lee who really, really wants to play and might not be very happy being a guy who gets into the lineup every 10 days or so.
Right. Like I said, especially if a Caro or a Teal starts scuffling. Yeah, Reese McGuire is not going to rock the boat. He might rock the Hyundai in a parking lot, but he's not going to rock the boat.
That story never will leave him. It will never leave him. And it probably shouldn't.
No, it really shouldn't. But getting back to a guy like Curtis Mead, when you think about where he fits on the team and some of the question marks you would have, if I'm Getz and Venable, I know you spent a bunch of money on the guy, but I'm looking at Murakami going, I don't know what he's going to do when the season starts. I don't know what if he's going to handle lefties. I don't know if he's going to handle guys with high velocity. Curtis Mead is at least capable of that. I mean, we've seen it. This is a high pedigree hitter in the Rays system before they traded for him. So you do wonder sometimes if you're sitting there going, okay, yeah, we're going to hold on to Curtis Mead because you and I as fans are going to be surprised at how often we see him and how much he protects some of the other guys on the team. Especially with that positional versatility where, he may end up pinch hitting for somebody and then you'll see, a shift around of Miguel Vargas going to first, for example, or Mead himself staying in. I don't blame them for necessarily wanting to give guys who are out of options every opportunity before their hand is forced. Again, like I said with Korey Lee, that's just my guess, is that, after a couple of seasons of being a trade acquisition to come here and be the guy, and he was anointed kind of the guy when they were still rocking Maldonado behind the plate. Maybe he was just getting too noisy in the room. But Pereira, if you're going to make a trade for him, you're going to have to give this guy a chance to sink or swim. I'm not convinced this guy is going to swim. Like I said, I liken him to White Sox era Sammy Sosa, which I think elicited a yuck from you.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's necessarily about Getz not wanting to give up on his toys in favor of a Sam Antonacci. I think it's a comfortable thing for him to sit there and say, if we give a guy really every opportunity, in major league games to prove that he can stick, he can be useful, or he can be something, then, you keep your head up high even if you have to release a guy, right? If they just completely falter. And you say, look, it was a worthwhile attempt. If, and if the guy succeeds, that's awesome. At the end of the day, I think you can sit there and say, I know what Sam Antonacci probably brings to my team. And if at some point what's going on the major league field, whether it's infield or outfield, is just absolutely terrible, and we can't sustain it, we can't be, we're going to get knocked for being a non-competitive team, then you have that opportunity.
Sox in the Basement listeners trying to make the most of your money, give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement. No matter what stage you are at, it costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC. Well, either way, baseball starts this week, and I think I'm looking, at least at the beginning of this season, for a couple of things. What is Shane Smith going to be? Because the spring was terrible. What is Colson Montgomery going to be? Because the spring was terrible. These are two guys that were big positives in 2025 that I think it's fair to be a little bit nervous about. Then I have to wonder, will Murakami be able to keep up with these very fast pitches that he's never seen before? I believe he will. I think he's going to make that adjustment. I think he's going to have a good season. But I think that's what I'm watching right away coming out of camp. Not only how is Will Venable setting up his roster, how are players being deployed, but what's going on with Smith, what's going on with Montgomery, and what's going on with Murakami. I think those are my big questions. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else you're looking for in the first couple of weeks?
No, I mean, I think those are the major ones. I think you could add to that, how does Edgar Caro do, knowing that he really doesn't have any competition? And then I think you could add to that, how does Chase Meidroth do?
Do you think that Caro, like he feels competition with Teal and that impacts him? I mean, it seems to me like the team basically is like, you're both our catchers. But I mean, I guess that would be true, right? They both want to be the number one. So maybe that is something that impacts him when he doesn't have actually the other guy constantly like he shows up to the ballpark. Am I catching today? Or if I'm not catching, he's going to get far more games, you would think. I mean, I would be shocked if Reese McGuire is in an even split with Edgar Caro for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see McGuire as much. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when Edgar Caro's handed the reins by himself. But you're right about Shane Smith. Now, fears will be put aside, I think, if he goes out against the Brewers opening day and has, a quality start. Even if it's not perfect, even if he doesn't shut him down or anything like that, if he just has a good, solid quality start, I'm going to be a lot less worried. Because there's a lot of things you can say about a pitcher in spring, that the Arizona air being able to give up more home runs, balls break a little bit less, changeup, might have a little less ride on it, fade on it, whatever. But if he falters and has a bad opening game and then follows it up with, bad starts, if he Sean Burks himself, that's going to be disappointing. And Colson, I'm not expecting much more than 240 and a bunch of bombs off of him. So if that's where he resides, that's where he is. That's great. I would love to sit there and say that he is going to be Corey Seager, the way people were claiming he was going to be. He's going to hit close to 300 with 40 bombs, but he may never be the high average guy.
All right. Well,
and I could be okay with that.
We're going to see what happens here as the season gets started. And, we've made a lot of assumptions here on this show. I mean, there's a possibility somebody makes this roster that we didn't see coming. There's a possibility, let's say Derek Hill doesn't make the team. I don't know. But as we sit down and record, these seem to be the guys that are making the roster. This seems to be the direction the team is going in, and we'll see how it all shakes out as the season begins. Hopefully, they got the blood pressure up a little bit. I try to be a little angsty, little like worrisome. I'm to be honest with you, I'm not that worried. This is a season that should be fun. This should be an enjoyable baseball season. Okay, no matter who's on the 26-man roster, this should be a much improved team that goes out and wins 75 games and competes to be possibly a 500 team and may surprise you and challenge at least for the last playoff spot, even though I don't think that they would make the playoffs this year. This should be a team that has really good young stars on the pitching front and the hitting front with Antonacci and Braden Montgomery showing up here throughout the season, making debuts, and should continue to get better as the season progresses. I'd like to see them get off to a relatively good start, and a relatively good start to me is play 500 baseball or close to it. Win a few series early on. Don't come out and fall flat on your face and lose 10 in a row in April. Like, don't do that. Just come out and be competent, and let's see who rises to the top, who needs to be replaced by somebody who's challenging for his position down in the minor leagues. And this should be a fun season out at the ballpark. We will see you at Cork and Kerry at the park all season long. I'm going to continue to add like interviews from the Cork, our proud sponsors out there at 33rd and Princeton, and make sure that you get out there all season long for pregame, postgame, in-game pleasure. And at some point, you'll be on your feet, and I can't wait to be at your first baseball game back, my friend. When do you think that's going to be?
I don't know. It could be right here at the beginning of the season, could be a little bit later on, but I'm going to make my way there.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I want to get you back, though, very, very soon. That's Ed. We've been using a great picture of him on the YouTube. He's annoyed with me. He doesn't want to say it, but he's annoyed with me with the picture. And that's because you said, I don't want to be on video because I look ridiculous. And I was like, I'll make you look ridiculous.
That picture is from better times. So.
All right, buddy. Keep feeling better. We'll talk soon.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.